Fighting alongside soldiers isn't what I signed up for.
But you signed up for Rebels Ramble from Faster and More Intense.
Alright, so today we're going to be discussing the finale of Star Wars Rebels Season 2. Unfortunately, Jen Marie will not be joining us as we had promised last week, but Paul is still here. Hey Paul, nice to have you back.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Looking forward to talking about this episode. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was probably the most stuff to talk about of any Rebels episode as of yet. It was an incredible amount of stuff that went on that was relevant not only to the show, I think, but also to the larger canon as a whole.
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah, precisely. And that's one thing I think that my first takeaway was that it added a whole bunch to the canon timeline, like you said, the overall one. It brought, Clone Wars in, it brought in the films. I mean, it's got everything. So that's hats off. Give us a lot to talk about today for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think let's just start off here with... there was obviously a lot of expectation running into this finale for a lot of different reasons. But let's just go around here real quick. And did you like the show, yes or no? And did it meet your expectations? Paul, why don't you start us off?
Well, I'll start with what was first and foremost in my mind going into the episode, and that was a question of what was going to happen to Ahsoka. We knew she was going to face her former master. We knew it was going to be a lightsaber battle, or at least that's what the speculation was going to be. And I was, like we talked about a little bit earlier today, I was expecting for us to see how her tale ended. And I knew they had and I expected it was going to be some way that was heroic and heartfelt, and something that would create a legacy. I thought her story was over because we weren't going to expect to see her, obviously, in any of the future. She in the canon timeline, she wasn't there. So I expected this to be the end. And I don't know about you guys, but I think she's still alive. So it did not meet my expectations there. But hey, knowing that Darth Maul was going to be in it and seeing how they intertwined his story into this story was great. I think that was it met or exceeded my expectations there. I did not expect to have three, or at least we assume three Inquisitors to get knocked off here, which was really cool. And obviously, when it comes to the actual battle between Ahsoka and Vader, how that transpired, which we obviously are going to talk about, and how they combined the voices of Matt Lanter and James Earl Jones, that was off the charts for me. So there's my initial thoughts.
George?
Yeah, quality-wise, I liked it. It definitely met my expectations there. I do agree. I expected a different ending for Ahsoka. I'm not as sure that she's alive. My hunch probably is that the fact that they made it somewhat ambiguous does mean that they were leaving the door open for her to come back if they decide that's the route they want to go. But I do think it was left ambiguous, so I don't want to state definitively either way. And truth be told, I'm with you. I was expecting her to die. And so, like you said, in that regard, my expectations weren't met. But that's not to disparage the quality of the episode, which, with a few small hiccups, I thought, was overall quite excellent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat with you guys, with Ahsoka, as I did think she was going to die. And so when we're watching the scene, as we're leading up to it, I'm really thinking, if she's going to die, I really wish there was a little more, heartfelt, emotion going on between them. If this is going to be the last we see of Ahsoka, she better go out with a serious bang. But yeah, so I was also really surprised when I saw her at the end of the episode. But time will tell to see, I guess, how she is used in the new canon. Because from what I hear, I don't think she's necessarily going to be showing up in Rebels again. One of the
At
things,
least not anytime soon.
yeah, at least not anytime soon. One of the things that I was really expecting was I liked that they were bringing Maul back as the old master, and I kind of wished he would have stayed that way. I liked his old man routine, and I think I liked how it was kind of a different take on Maul than we've seen before, and I would have liked if he had kept that throughout the episode, rather than just kind of transforming back to the Maul we saw at the end of the Clone Wars.
My only thought is, I don't think that would have worked once he met Ahsoka.
Well, I'm
Like, if
talking about
Ahsoka-
his not just becoming a super warrior again. I'm saying using a little more of the Force and less of the attack dog lightsaber wielder that he was back during the prequels and the Clone Wars.
I see where you're coming from. I didn't mind that they went back to just having him, be a fighter. I'm with you. I liked the old man routine. But I thought when they dropped it and revealed that it was 100% an act, I thought it was effective. And then his pretty, ruthless dispatching of the Inquisitors made me definitely pretty okay with the fact that he was, back to full fighting strength.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see. Excuse me. I see where you guys are coming from. I think I wasn't sure where they were going to take the feebleness and frailty that he started with, and I was, I was curious. I recognized his lightsaber right away, or at least the top of the lightsaber with the cane.
So did I.
So I was like, this guy has got something up his sleeve, and that's what I was waiting for as the story, unfolded. I was like, is this guy going to bust out his lightsaber and show us that he's still got some skills? But when he says, "Hey, I need you guys to help me with Vader," okay, he's not invincible. I think what the character we saw in the Clone Wars, where he was so confident in himself when he was, especially on Mandalore, that I think if he had Vader was coming at that point, obviously it couldn't have been, but if that was the Maul that we had in his life that we would see at this episode, I think he would have thought he could take Vader. He thought he was invincible. So I think he knew that he had some limitations, but I love the way that the story unfolded, because having 4 double-bladed lightsabers in one scene, with 3 other Jedis, or excuse me, 2 Jedis and a part-timer in the scene, that was pretty cool, So I love the way that they, kind of opened that up, and you had all those lightsabers going at the same time. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
This is kind of off on a tangent, but can anyone recall a duel that had more blades at once than that scene? Because I really cannot.
What was the question? Sorry, you kind of broke up there.
Sorry. A lightsaber duel that had more blades in it than that scene. Can anyone recall any?
Other than the Battle of Geonosis, probably not.
Yeah, and even that I wouldn't really count as a duel.
Though. Yeah. That's
true. There was a lot of lightsabers obviously in that scene, but they were all held by one side. So, or generally. So yeah, as far as that many lightsabers on each side, you're probably right.
Well,
I can't think of any story in the timeline that might equal that.
Yeah, I can think of one, and that would be, now they weren't exactly swinging at the time, but in The Wrong Jedi, when Anakin is fighting Varys Offee, he's got 1, she has 2, and then I believe there's 4 temple guards who each have 2. So
yeah,
yeah.
I don't know if that's more or not, and maybe
I think it would still lose here if you had Ezra.
It still
Kanan.
was. Yeah.
You got 11, 12, because obviously Ahsoka has 2. So I think we got 12 blades if you count obviously the double blade as 2.
Mm-hmm.
The highest average, I think, would be probably the fight with Sidious, Maul, and Savage in the Clone Wars, right? Because there, everyone uses 2, but I think Maul actually switches from his double-bladed to the Darksaber partway through that duel. So that could actually bring it up to 3 different blades for Maul, admittedly not all at once.
Yeah.
I guess something with Grievous could have the highest average since he could use 4, or Pong Krell. Grievous versus Pong Krell. I wish that was a fight we saw, but that's way off topic.
That's is way off topic, but it sounds really fun. But of all the amazing things in this episode, we talk about lightsabers the whole time. But yeah.
So what do you guys think of? Speaking of double blades, if we stay on that tangent,
I think I know where we're going.
Oh yeah.
So what do you think of the new way to travel using a double bladed lightsaber?
George, I believe you had an excellent way of describing this. Go ahead.
The helicopter sabers?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to.
They're just here's the thing. It's really, really, really goofy and I think pretty dumb. And honestly, if they had introduced it in an older episode and then used it here, it might not have been a huge deal. But when this is overall I'd say a very serious episode. And when you're introducing something that looks that visually ridiculous, for me it didn't jive with the rest of the episode. I thought it looked dumb. I was not a fan of the helicopter lightsaber.
Never mind the physics of it. I mean,
well, yeah, exactly, because you can't judge Star Wars stuff based on the physics. It's just the whole series is rife with problems. But even that, to me, seemed like it was kind of stretching it a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe if they hadn't given the helicopter sound that we would be used to, and they used something else, because like you said, obviously we cannot apply the physical laws of the universe as we know it to this one. But yeah, that one could have left that one on the cutting room floor and figured out another way for them to. But I mean, how else are they going to get to the different levels of the temple that quickly? Maybe they had to come up with something. I much preferred when the new Inquisitor, put the lightsaber away and turned that thing into like a hacksaw and was about ready.
That was cool. That I liked.
That one I was down with for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if it really makes that much sense because the easier thing would just be use the lightsaber to cut his hand. But it looks cool and it's definitely more intimidating than just moving your blade slowly towards him.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm willing to overlook that one more than I am the Helisabers.
Yeah. Well, let's
Helisabers, good. I like that.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
No, I was just going to say I'm not sure if you coined the phrase or not. I like the way that you said that. We'll call them Helisabers.
Yeah. Let's move on to the characters here because this was probably. I mean, there was a lot of character development in all of the characters that went on in this story. But I guess let's start with the poster child of Rebels, and that'd be Ezra. And he is really taking a dark turn in the last episode and in these 2 episodes, and looking forward to season 3.
Yeah.
I mean, it got dark really quickly. I'm having a hard time. I'm already seeing him as the enemy, So, how do you guys think they handled that? And how do you like his character turning dark?
Well, I hesitate to say he's turning dark. I mean, certainly I think he's now more susceptible to the dark side. But, I mean, he's still with the rebels. That's still the side he's fighting for. So I think, I think he could fall. I'm not saying it's unlikely. I just don't think it's quite happened yet. Even the eyes at the end, they weren't like full Sith eyes. It felt like, they were on their way. That said, I do think I should rewatch this season and just look for further seeds of him like touching the dark side. But it's clearly happened before. So I thought building off of what they had done already was a smart move.
Yeah, I would continue the same thought. I kind of feel the same way, that we obviously are supposed to leave this season and look forward to the next, wondering how close he potentially can get to, the dark side. So, yeah, his eyes were a pink instead of red, right? So it's, we're supposed to see that he's getting closer to that, and this is the closest he's ever been. I thought it was interesting how Ahsoka said in the episode, "No Jedi can open the Sith's holocron," and then at the very, very last scene of this episode is him, I believe, opening it.
Yeah.
So we are left to,
Yeah.
definitely supposed to be leaving the season going. There's a problem here for, the Ghost crew, and Ezra's got some he's got some sorting out to do to be able to control this. And now, Shiloh, like you and I were talking about before we started today, if you throw in there, and not to get too quickly to another character, but if you throw in there what's happened to his master and his disability now, and how it's going to change Kanan, how is that relationship going to evolve into season 3 with Kanan's abilities being limited from a physical standpoint, but I think his force powers are going to grow because of the need, to compensate for the sense he's lost. And then how is that going to be compared to these powers and these abilities that Ezra is beginning to explore?
Mm-hmm. And we might as well just move on to Kanan here. Now that you mentioned it, but I love the fact that he got this disability because it lends some danger to the show, that our heroes are not invulnerable, which is good. It darkens the episode even more. I mean, it's a fairly serious mutilation. And also, it's a great contrast between someone who is so independent and strong and not a care in the world and flippant and go-lucky like Kanan was, especially in A New Dawn, to now have him have to rely on others and have to, use the Force more, rely on it more, and not his before he could, rely on his strength, his sight. Now he truly has to rely on the Force. So I think it's going to make him much wiser and much more humble.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm really excited to see where they take this new development. And I agree with you. I think I've told you before how I kind of wished that in, Fire Across the Galaxy, the end of season 1, I thought there were some chances for, like, some serious character development, like when, like, Kanan thought Ezra had died, him almost touching the dark side, something serious happening to Ezra. And I was kind of disappointed that they kind of shied away from doing that. And so them blinding Kanan here was, I really enjoyed. I'm glad they did it. And it's a sort of wound that is, not terribly common in Star Wars. It's happened, a couple of times in the EU, but normally if you want to bring someone down a peg, you have them lose a hand, then they get a mechanical hand, and it's essentially business as usual. But so having Kanan be blinded actually offers a bunch of storytelling opportunities that you touched on, that I think could lead to him becoming a much more interesting character. So props to them. That was a really good idea. I really liked it.
Yeah. And this show is interesting in how, we've talked many a time about how Rebels is geared towards a slightly younger audience, especially season 1. Some of the stuff, it won't go as far as the Clone Wars in certain areas, but with this show is almost in some ways going darker than the Clone Wars. Like, I don't ever remember someone having to deal with the consequences of a serious mutilation in the Clone Wars, or that really slow journey to... we saw Anakin's journey to the dark side in the Clone Wars, but I get the feeling it wasn't as dark and as kind of creepy almost as Ezra's slow descent.
I think that's true. The only thing I can think of with any character really going dark, maybe Krell, but I was going to say Ahsoka does in the Mortis arc, but even then, that's not really her fault.
Yeah.
It's still pretty unsettling to see. But yeah, it's not, this essentially destruction of character, in a manner of speaking, that we're seeing with Ezra a little bit. So very interesting, and I think a very fair point.
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat. Have to totally agree when it to chime in on the on Kanan losing his sight. I'm really glad that they went there. I like the idea, Shiloh, like you said, about the crew's not invulnerable. I expected maybe somebody, during season 2 or season 3 to actually lose a hand or, get something, something to happen to them. They have to deal with this stuff. Coming out of every episode unscathed at some level, it gets old. I know this is the story of the Ghost Crew. We know who the heroes are going to be. They need to obviously last at least until nearly till the end of the series, but this was a great way to change, the way the Ghost Crew operates, and that's what it's going to do. And we can kind of talk about what happened, the last few scenes at the end. But seeing how Hera reacted, and seeing how, Rex reacted, with Ahsoka not being there, and all that stuff. This crew, this is probably the biggest, shot, that they've had to take. In the whole series, and seeing how they rebound from that is going to be obviously what we're going to see in season 3. So it's going to be great. I'm really glad they did that as well.
Yeah, and a fact about that rebounding, which I really like, is that they have that base now. So
yes,
in the first few episodes of season 3, I actually would kind of like to see them hanging around the base more, kind of recuperating, because I think that base for some degree will allow for some recalculation, and they can just have a couple downtime episodes. And I like that idea that they can they're not constantly on the run anymore. Like, some of that tension can kind of go away, just, hanging around the base, doing some less drama-heavy episodes.
And I hope that this will then, if what you say is true, and I hope it is, because I agree with you, maybe this will give Dave Filoni and the crew time to allow more speculation to come up then on what the damn owl is for. Because it appears on that planet, and appeared on Malachor, and if you heard kind of some of the conversations after that, what it potentially could represent, which he wouldn't really say a lot other than it does represent something. Please speculate away over the summer. I'm hoping that can be kind of revealed, because maybe we can kind of go there next. This is clearly supposed to represent something. We've seen it in the last 2 episodes. And he said what it isn't in his interviews, and that is, it is not an avatar of the dark side. But this is supposed to mean something, because if you go back and look, this creature appeared in the Clone Wars, and that's what he pointed out. This is not the first time you've seen it. Yeah. Go back and maybe look at that, and then we know some of the episodes that it did appear in. And I don't know about you guys, but I've been drawing a blank.
Well, one of the obvious things I can kind of think of is possibly an avatar of Yoda in some way. And I believe, I may be wrong, but Ambush, first episode of the Clone Wars, Yoda is sitting on that rock, giving a speech to the clone troopers, and is that the same creature that that sits on his finger and then flies away?
While we're talking, I will look it up.
All right.
Well, you got that.
It
could be,
because I haven't thought about that at all. So now I'm very curious now that you bring that up.
So that's one option. The other option I can kind of think of, I don't know how they would really tie this in well, is perhaps an avatar of some of those beings, or one of those beings that we saw in the Mortis trilogy.
Well, it couldn't be Mortis, because they're all dead, but it could be the beings from the Yoda arc at the end.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that might... No.
That strikes me as a more reasonable possibility.
Yeah.
Like, if it had ties to Mortis, I wouldn't be surprised, but it can't be a representation of the father, son, or daughter.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot they all died.
Dead.
I think Filoni mentioned that the one episode, or at least the first, I don't know if it was the first time, but he said he confirmed one episode that he was the one with Ahsoka and the other kids were in that forest being hunted by the Transdosians.
Yeah,
yep.
Transdosians.
It was in that episode. But that's something that we, would be interesting to look into deeper. Then is what are all the episodes that they appeared in, and is there a correlation we can draw there?
Mm-hmm. And has he said specifically that this represents something important?
Yeah.
No. Well, he said. Well, he said that it represents something. Well, I was going to say he says that it's represented something important. He hasn't said what.
Yes, exactly.
Is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, he said something to the effect of for the real Star Wars junkies, at least the way I took it, the real Star Wars junkies, are going to, maybe would have some insight because it definitely means something. And he said, speculate away. But something to him, he said, as a filmmaker, it really drives something for him as a filmmaker.
Interesting. I couldn't imagine that it would be an incarnation of the Force, because the Force I don't think needs that. The Force is everything, the cosmic force and whatnot. I don't really think it needs a bird to be flying around being its eyes and ears.
That's true. Yeah,
that's why I'm drawing a blank.
It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
And as much as I enjoy speculating, I don't know if there's, at least I can't immediately see any one interpretation that has a bunch of evidence backing it up. And I'm sure there are those out there who will put together a theory that is more thorough than anything I'm willing to throw together right now. But at this point, it is, I think, basically wild speculation. So I'm a little hesitant to talk too much about it.
Yeah.
And I just pulled up. Looks like it's about 17 minutes into episode 1. It's not the owl, or I guess it's a convori or something. I think is what the species name is, but it doesn't look anything like it. It looks like more like a little dragon with wings that Yoda's holding. So
okay.
Next theory.
Yeah. Next theory. Well, instead of next theory, why don't we move on to the next character? We already talked a little about him in the beginning, but Maul. In general, bringing him back, did you guys like it, or do you think it just made universe a little smaller and was a little fan servicey?
I liked it.
Yeah, go ahead, George. Sorry.
I was gonna say, I didn't like bringing him back in the Clone Wars, but now that he is, now that the Clone Wars brought him back and did a good job with his return, I have to admit. I don't really take any huge issue with him showing up in Rebels as well. And one of the beautiful things I've said about Star Wars, especially with someone like Maul meeting other Jedi, is whenever, the universe seems a little smaller, there's some insane coincidence, you can just say it's the will of the Force. And there you go.
Yeah.
And it also, because it was, Yoda that told them to go to Malachor, there's obviously a reason behind that. And I think it's not unreasonable to say that Yoda kind of knew that, Maul would be there, or that there would be other parties there that would lead to something going down. So, yes, I was fine with his appearance. And I enjoyed how they characterized him as well.
Which does bring up, why did Yoda send them... Yeah. Which does bring up the point, why did Yoda send them to Malachor in the first place? Because it doesn't seem like anything good happened out of that entire experience.
I saw...
Well,
Filoni's been making the rounds.
The speculation was knowledge, right?
Yes. Yeah. I'd have to look, because I know Filoni's been making the rounds. Doing interviews after the finale, and I remember seeing in one of them he kind of touched on it, and it was along the lines of, Yoda knew something important was going to happen there, because Vader said the Emperor foresaw the same thing, and so it was kind of the two of these really powerful beings in the Force kind of foreseeing that something important would happen there, and they took the steps necessary to set it into motion, for better or worse. That's kind of how I read it. And I know Filoni, like I said, he has an interview with IGN. He's done them elsewhere. They've all been really informative. You should look them up. But it was along the lines that Yoda knew something important was going to happen there. And he wanted to make sure it played out as it was supposed to.
Yeah. Were you going to say something, Paul?
No, I was agreeing and just was kind of piggyback on what George said just about Maul. Appearing in the Clone Wars and having quite a few episodes I thought was cool, because that was probably that was a lot bigger surprise, I think, when he made an appearance in the Clone Wars than him coming back for Rebels, because I think the whole planet thought that he was dead after the Phantom Menace being cut in two. So I think that was a lot bigger surprise to bring him back for Clone Wars. But then, and I think it kind of is along the same lines as Dave Filoni not officially and very poignantly killing off Ahsoka. Kind of leaving it open that she's still around. I would have liked to seen that, he didn't die in the Clone Wars, but, we had the comics after that, which continued the story. And then that one left us hanging. We knew that he escaped there. So, I guess if I had one wish, it would be, Dave, grow a pair and let's kill some people off. We need to do it. We can't carry on their stories forever. It's okay for some of these people some of these characters to pass on. That makes the story great. It makes it more real, if you want to say that. So, I thought maybe that Maul would appear in this episode and then be killed. I wouldn't have been surprised if that was the case, because we could finish his story. I thought maybe that Maul would be the one, not Vader, that would kill Ahsoka. Maybe accidentally or something like that, or Ahsoka would kill Maul. None of that would have surprised me, because I thought some of these characters were going to have an end with this. But here we sit today. The season 2 is over. We're waiting for season 3, and we're definitively, I think both those characters and Maul for sure, still kicking.
Yeah, and let's move on to Ahsoka now, because there's a lot to talk about as far as her character in this, and her character going forward. One of the things that I find kind of not jiving very well is, one of the things they're trying to push very hard in this series is that Ahsoka is not a real Jedi. She says she's not a Jedi. Maul calls her a part-timer, which was pretty funny. It's strange why he should know that, but anyway.
Well, actually, I was going to say, one of the things that Filoni mentioned in the interviews is that last arc of the Clone Wars was going to deal with Maul interacting with Ahsoka.
Okay.
And so if, I think they're treating those as canon, even if they haven't been officially told yet. And so that would have been where, he kind of learned that she is, in fact, just a part-timer.
Okay. Well, so, we have all this, and she's mentioned many times she's not a Jedi, but yet she seems exactly like a Jedi. I don't see anything in her character that is distinguishing her from being a Jedi. She's acting exactly how a Jedi would. She knows the things a Jedi would. She's doing all the things. Do you guys see a definitive reason to make a difference between her and a Jedi?
At this point, oh, Paul, you go.
No, I'm thinking out loud, and I'm drawing a blank. I'm trying to find something that we would say, well, she did something that a Jedi wouldn't, but no. She's aligned herself with the Ghost crew and the rebellion. She's against the Empire, obviously, and wants to help them, but she just doesn't. She's just not a card-carrying Jedi. I think the principles of how she was raised and taught will always be there for her. She just has decided that she's not going to be a card-carrying Jedi, and she's obviously very vocal about that. She even said that, and I think maybe I'm trying to when we get down to the last couple of scenes, then, which really I think where kind of highlights her character, is she feels really bad about leaving Anakin, because that's what she kind of brings up when she finds out that Vader is Anakin. That's when she comes out and says, "I'm not going to leave you again." So that one kind of struck me as, she's trying to redeem herself for what happened there, at least at some level. So I think she wants to be, and recognizes that she's more of a Jedi than anything else, but she got burned by him. And so I think she's made it up in her mind that she's never going to align herself directly with the organization or with the Order.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, there's a lot more reason for her not recognizing herself as a Jedi, during the last few months of the Clone Wars. Because there's an actual, the Order is still standing. There's essentially like a governing board of Jedi who she'd have to answer to. And that's not what she wants to do. But at the same time, she's not someone who's going to turn her back on all of her former principles and refuse to try to help people. So I think, to your question, why, bother not calling yourself a Jedi, I think it is, like Paul kind of said, a carryover from that time in the Clone Wars where she decided, I'm no longer a Jedi, I don't answer to them, I'm not bound by their codes, but at the same time, also still giving heavy deference to their codes. So I think, Paul has a point, if she, went and said, oh, you know what, I'll just be a Jedi, I don't think that would be ridiculous, but at the same time, after, it being so long, and apparently, again, I think Filoni mentioned that she would have debated coming back to the Order in that arc, and then again making the call not to, I don't think she's the type of person to then just, because, they're Jedi or no more, saying, okay, I'm a Jedi again.
Yeah.
And I think we've got a good comparison between, because you've got Maul and you've got Ahsoka, and neither of them aligns with Jedi or Sith, okay? But you can see a stark difference between the two, because Ahsoka, definitely says she's not a Jedi, and certainly isn't going to align herself with the Sith, because you can see the way Maul's behavior even continues now. He says, he's definitely not, he's not Darth Maul anymore. He's just Maul, and he doesn't align himself with the Sith. But, again, but he's not in that gray enough area to where he is close to the Jedi code or anything like that, because when he has an opportunity to, take care of some of these Inquisitors, he doesn't hesitate. He's still ruthless. So he's still much more of a Sith than any of our other, if you want to call them gray Jedis or these Force wielders, I think is what the episode said, at the same time. So I think we've got a good contrast there of Ahsoka being just very simply, somebody that's going to stand on principles and has values that are very closely aligned with what the Jedi are. But she just simply says, I don't answer to that. I'm doing my own thing. But I'm still a good person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, then let's talk about, you alluded to this, Paul, but the fight between Darth Vader and Ahsoka, which highly anticipated. And we've all kind of said that we expected her to die. How did we like the outcome? And if we had our way, what would be our preferred ending? And not only ending, but how the fight played out. How did you guys like it?
The actual fight, I enjoyed. Really, I mean, before we get too far into it, I want to say I enjoyed Vader as a whole in this episode. His quick little duel with Ezra, I really liked. I loved his line. Ezra said something along the lines of, I'm not afraid of you, and his response was then, you will die braver than most.
Yeah. Total
which
Darth Vader.
Really total Darth Vader really reminded me of a line from Vader Down. And just, absolutely boss to hear James Earl Jones deliver that line. That was really cool. And then I liked the actual duel between him and Ahsoka. I wish it was longer. I wish the structure of the episode allowed for a greater focus on it.
Yep.
And the thing, Filoni has said is that this isn't a show about Vader or Ahsoka. It's about, the rebels. It's about the Ghost Crew. And I get that. So in a sense, we should be seeing the duel from, the eyes of Ezra and Kanan. But at the same time, I think you need to recognize as, a producer or director that this is something that, fans have really been waiting, you could say almost 8 years now to see. And even if it's not exactly, fitting the structure of the show, maybe you break the structure a little bit to actually deliver. Like I said, I liked what we got. I just wish there was more. As to the resolution of the fight, I would have liked a definitive answer, personally. Whether she somehow survived, whether, Vader killed her, which is what I expected, and I would have been fine with, honestly. Because I thought they did have a few good emotional moments, especially, as kind of Paul said earlier, once you start getting Matt Lanter doing some of the voice after she damages his helmet, really powerful stuff. And so I thought that was a good enough emotional moment where if she died there, I would have been fine with it. And so, like I said, I would have liked, honestly, probably to have seen the body and know that she didn't make it. I don't even need to see Vader actually killing her, because I could see how that could be considered gratuitous. But, like Paul kind of said, I would have liked a definitive answer.
Yeah.
And we did not get that.
And definitely a definitive answer is what I would say. I would actually have been fine with him not killing her, if it was done where he intentionally let her go. I think there's a way you could do that, because Vader, I've written a couple posts about this, about how he's becoming more ambiguous to his moral code and how he does things. Little tiny glimpses of compassion in the new canon. So I don't think it would be too horribly out of character for him to let her go, especially if he had less control over the situation. But I also wouldn't have minded to see him kill her. But I would wanted to see what happened either way. I want to see it. I want to have the violins playing in the background and the dramatic music, and I want to get every bit of it.
You know what? This one really is tough to come to a conclusion on what I'd rather have seen. I mean, I definitely would like the definitive answer. I wouldn't have minded at all if Vader killed Ahsoka. I think that would be a perfect way for her to end, for her story to end, and I'm totally fine with that. But I'm probably going to go back and forth for a while on what I think I would have preferred. Because if her story is going to continue, great. I mean, I love her as a character, and that's fine with me. If she's going to have a piece of the rebellions, in stealing or helping them grow and becoming a part of stealing the Death Star plans. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot that she can still do. That's cool, but I think it would have been okay again that her days were ended in this episode, and it should have been at the hands of Darth Vader. So I'm going to go back and forth on this a while. I think she's alive. That's my opinion. I don't think he would have shown that scene. I would have been fine. And I think, George, you just said it. We're supposed to see this from the eyes of the Ghost crew. And Dave Filoni almost got there, but he had to show this one clip of clearly it's her walking into the temple. And then you see Ashley Eckstein released on her clothing line, the same image on a shirt, it was like the day before
that's definitely
whatever.
True. What I've seen some people say, and I kind of think this is a fair point, that might not be a scene that's meant to be taken literally. And that's not something Star Wars has done terribly often. The closest thing I can think of is, say the vision in the cave in The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Where Luke, kills Vader, but plot twist, Vader is Luke. And so, a temple on Malachor with the presence of, some bird of ill omen, it seems. I think it can be read as not actually her walking into the cave. Like I said, I'm with you. My hunch is that the fact that they didn't show us a corpse means that she's still up and kicking. But, I don't think strongly enough, that there's evidence in the story to actually support that.
I mean, because if she died and they didn't, and all we got... I remember feeling, when I was watching it yesterday, I was just really disappointed for those few seconds when that door closed behind her, and I was like, we're not going to get to see their final moments, That's what and then later when I saw a few seconds later when I saw the scene where she is allegedly alive, but like you're saying, that may or may not be true, I was really disappointed that we weren't going to see the last... I thought it felt like a cop-out not showing those last moments.
Yep, agreed. That's my problem with it. If she is still alive, then great. If she isn't, then great. But let us know. We're ready to move on, I think we're ready to move on with this. It's okay if she doesn't make it. I mean, I feel like we're starting to beat the... or kick the dog here while it lies. So this is this is something that we are meant to speculate on. And George, I like what you said. I didn't really think about this as maybe as being, something like the Cave in Empire. We're meant to read more into it. That she was going into this temple and that was her final resting place. I don't know, something of that nature. Okay, that's fine. We're meant to see this from the Ghost crew. They don't know. I mean, last we see, as far as, I guess, Chopper and Ezra and Kanan are concerned, they're blasting out of this underground temple and there's this huge explosion. As far as they know, Vader and Ahsoka are both gone. Who survives that? There's meant to be a lot of questions, and that's the whole point. We're supposed to have these conversations all summer. Maybe they'll start cluing us in when we start season 3. Hopefully we find out, but I don't think we're gonna, what happened. And I wish Dave would just let us know. I'm okay either way.
Yeah.
Let's just stop, messing with our minds here.
Because, I mean, if you want to mess with our minds about Ezra's story, okay, that's fine. He's a new character. The show is kind of about him. But like you said, we've been seeing Ahsoka and Maul. I mean, we've been seeing them forever. I mean, we've had so much stuff about them. It really is time to just move on. You don't need to give us a mystery every single time.
I would have been fine with Vader with slicing up both Ahsoka and Maul in the same scene.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
That would have been awesome. I mean, we still would be saying this was the greatest Rebels episode, if not one of the greatest, moments in the Star Wars, history. If we, or in the universe, if we put a lot of our favorite scenes together, because there would be so much happening in one scene. That's fine. We're okay. We're okay with that sort of thing.
Yeah. I was going to jump in. I actually would disagree. I don't think this would have been a good episode for Maul to end on. Mostly because, I think, we kind of, Shiloh, you mentioned fan service earlier. And I think that bringing Maul back for an episode to be cool and then die is kind of fan servicey. Whereas by letting him live, they can show that they still have stories to tell with Maul, which I think is speaks to there being a little more motive behind his return.
Yeah,
I'm fine with that. That's cool. If we're gonna have more stories, that's great. But I say that if he had came back and this was his end at the same time, I would have been okay with that, whether it was considered fan service or not. Because at least we had an end, and we've had two times in his life now that we thought was the end, or maybe could have been. The last time we saw him, obviously, what happened in Phantom Menace, and then the next time, if you take the comic out of it, but when we left him in Clone Wars, Palpatine's is going to town on him. But he says, I've got big plans for you. But anyway, I think the point is that if we're going to continue things, great. But I think Dave and the crew needs to be okay with finalizing some of these stories, because we can't carry them on forever, and it's okay for that to for those guys to whoever that is for their stories to end, because we want completion. Yeah. We always say we want closure on something as people. These are stories we want closure on eventually. It's okay.
And like you were saying, Paul, about how this had the potential to be such amazing scenes in all of Star Wars. I mean, I think that a Ahsoka versus Vader, I really thought coming into this that this had the potential to be one of the greatest scenes of all time in Star Wars. Just because of how much everyone has grown to love Ahsoka and the relationship between Anakin and Ahsoka, and it felt like I thought we were going to be getting one of the greatest scenes of all time, and I don't think we got that. I mean, the scene was good. I mean, it was definitely above average of the scenes that we get in Rebels, but I don't think it made that of all time list.
Agreed. Yep, 100%. Great scene, but could have been better.
That's fair. Yeah, there was definitely room for improvement. Like I said, I still thought it had some great moments, but yeah, there definitely, I thought, were flaws with it. And I think to excuse it from that for the how much I enjoyed those moments probably isn't fair.
Yeah.
The only thing I would add to the Ahsoka Vader confrontation, and at first I wanted this, but I think the more that I think about it, it probably is best that it didn't happen. But when he first says her name, so after she slices his mask open, it kind of comes in garbled. I think he says Ahsoka. and it's obviously now that his mask is kind of broken open, you can hear some of Anakin's voice. And so that's obviously changed. And I love that it sounded like the Return of the Jedi sound effects, right? Which was when his mask was failing after, at the very end of Return of the Jedi. It's the same squeaking, distorted, whatever. And I thought that part was great. But I think he says her name. And then the second time he speaks, it is her name definitively. But I think it would have been cool. At first, I thought it would have been cool, and maybe I think it might have been too much. I don't think Vader could have gone there when I think about it. But if he would have said Snips, what would have all thought if that's what after he gets he gets hurt there obviously, and he's got to get out of there. He's got to get his suit back in order for him to survive. But if he said Snips, what would you guys have thought?
If he said Snips, I think he would have had to let her go. Because I like I said, I could really see this scene going both ways. I could see them dueling for a while, and then her make an impassioned plea, and then he just lets her go, or he could kill her. But I think if he said Snips, I think that's personal to the point of after he said that, I don't think it would jive well with him trying to kill her again.
Yeah, I agree. I think I might disagree with Shiloh. I don't like the idea of him letting her go, honestly. I think, like Filoni said, the only person that really had a shot at redeeming him should be Luke. And if he's willing to let her go, that implies there's still some connection there that if played well enough, would theoretically give, it would show there's still good in him, and I think that's Luke's job to do. So I don't love the idea, especially when he's earlier in his career as Vader, I think there's a little more wiggle room. But I think at this point he's been in the suit for at least 15 years, and so I don't think that this is the time for him to be showing compassion. So I agree. I wouldn't. I never even liked Snips all that much to begin with. I don't think I would have liked it here. And I mean, even I think in the Clone Wars, they started to phase it out a little more, I thought, as the seasons went on. So I don't think it would have fit here.
Yeah, at first I thought it would have, but then, like I said, more I thought about it, I think that would have been too much of a moment of weakness. I do think Vader had a moment of weakness there, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Because the first exchange they have before they go off and duel and she gets thrown off the side of the temple there. Their first exchange is she is saying, at first I thought I know who you were, but my master would never be this vile. And so Vader, Anakin gets the understanding then that she's not totally convinced that it's him. So I think after that moment when she comes back, slices open his mask, he's got a moment of weakness and he wants her to know. Now, maybe that's part of his own sick way because he obviously resorts very quickly to, I'm going to kill you anyway.
I don't think that was actually, I think that was more involuntary. Because, so, what I keep thinking about is Lords of the Sith. He had a flashback in there, where he had a moment of weakness. And that wasn't something intentional of him. And the Emperor even called him on it. And he didn't bother to lie. He eventually, a couple seconds, he regained control of his hate, what have you, and filed that stuff away. But he has had several moments of weakness in the new canon. So I think that legitimately was kind of a knee-jerk reaction to everything that had been going on. The shock of having your masks torn away. And then just all the emotions swirling around. But then he got control of his hate once again and, continued on being Darth Vader.
I disagree. And it's, again, because of the timeline. And I also actually think the function of Lords of the Sith as a novel. I think Lords of the Sith functions as almost like the true birth of Darth Vader. I think that novel serves as like him putting his past behind him. Because it ends with him just going and slaughtering that village of Twi'leks. I think its function is to show him
eliminating... But he's slaughtered people
eliminating...
before, though. That wasn't the first time he'd slaughtered anybody.
Yeah, well, I mean...
He's got a temple
You
full
sure?
of younglings that didn't survive his lightsaber.
That's true. There's the Jedi, yeah, but in terms of like non-combatants, and especially after all that, monologuing and him trying to find the good in him, I think Lords of the Sith is meant to function as him, kind of putting aside his past once and for all. And even if it doesn't happen in Lords of the Sith, that's still at least a decade earlier in the timeline.
Yeah. No, I see where you're going.
You,
I think you're right, and I think if you follow that line of thinking, then perhaps when he says her name, and whether he realizes that it's his, his human voice, not the mechanical voices coming out, he then, I would be led to believe then that the intention is he wanted her to know before he killed her that he was her old master. And maybe that's his sick, evil, twisted mind saying, I'm going to end you, and you didn't think it was me, but it is. So, I want you to know as you meet your death that it was me, that I am capable of this. You say that it's too vile for me to act like that. Your master wouldn't act like that. Well, guess what? It's true. He is. Is he that evil? Is he that evil? Was he that dark?
Yeah,
I still have to disagree.
Exactly. And again, think like Return of the Jedi. He says Anakin Skywalker is dead. He's put Anakin behind him at this point.
Yeah, and that's what he said in this episode too.
But
and this is many years before Return of the Jedi.
Shows in Return of the Jedi, though, he's constantly trying to put away his past.
And it takes Luke to get him to bring it out, and Filoni says as much.
To get him to act on it, but not necessarily to bring it out, because it's come out before. I mean, even in the Darth Vader comics, he has a flashback to when that flashback when he thinks about Geonosis.
what triggers that flashback, the big flashback, it's Luke. When the biggest flashback in Vader is when he learns that he has a son. That's like what triggers his emotions.
But I mean, wouldn't Ahsoka trigger a same reaction though? Is what I'm saying. I mean, I'm not saying that it changes his character, that it redeems him in any way, but yet that it just triggers a burst of emotion. Obviously it didn't redeem him. It wasn't enough to redeem him.
I mean, a burst of emotion, sure. To say it's a moment of weakness or to insinuate that he would actually let her go, that's where I take issue. Especially the notion of him being willing to let her go. I don't see that at all.
No, yeah, and I agree with you there. I don't think he ever intended to let her go, and we're meant to leave the episode. If we want to go that far to say, well, that image of her going to the temple is meant to be something, existential. It wasn't in the physical. That maybe he did complete it. The Ghost Crew, it's through their eyes. They don't know. So that all works. And I don't think he had any intention of letting her go. He was very intent on ending her. But I think that moment, to Shiloh's point, brought out, I don't have any better way to term it than, it was a moment of weakness where he resorted back to something of his former self, and he caught it quickly, regained his hate, and he said, I'm going to end you. And whether that was involuntary or voluntary, if you want to say it's involuntary, I think it was a moment of weakness. If it was voluntary, it's because he wanted her to know that he was who he was his, or excuse me, her master, former master, and but that doesn't change what he was going to do.
Yeah,
that's fair.
All right. Well, before we wrap
up,
so
hats off to the Rebels crew. Hats off to the Rebels crew for get us to talk like this, because this is going to be the summer, to fuel the speculation, and I think that's the whole point. Is they want to leave all this open, because are we going to show up for season 3 to see what happens? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So hey, they did their job.
Yep. Well, there's a couple other things. Speaking of speculation, one, obviously, there is the ties of Malachor and the triple-bladed lightsaber to Force Awakens. And then also there is that Sith temple itself. So which one do you guys want to tackle first?
Honestly, I don't know if there's that much to tackle with the crossguard lightsaber. The visual dictionary said the design for Kylo Ren's lightsaber went back to the Scourge of Malachor, Here we saw it on Malachor. Maybe Kylo Ren went at some point. That would make sense. Maybe he visited the temple. But I don't honestly know if there's like what I thought was really funny was how heavily that crossguard lightsaber was like promoted in the lead up to this back half of the season.
Yeah.
And then literally the second after that really widespread shot, it sputtered out. And I was just like, okay, that was well done. Good on you guys.
Yeah. Well, then, the Sith Temple, which was really interesting to me. One, because it was some kind of super weapon. I don't know if it was the kind of weapon that turned all those people to stone, or it almost seemed like it was kind of a Starkiller-based Death Star type weapon, with its burst of energy going straight up towards the roof. But what I really didn't get was the Sith obviously knew about this temple, and the Sith obviously knew about this holocron. So why did they not come take it and activate this weapon a million years ago? I mean, the Empire obviously knew about it.
Well, I mean, did they know the full extent of this temple? I mean, the
yeah.
Jedi knew it was off limits.
The Inquisitors, remember,
they just knew it was
she
a
said
dangerous...
they've found the artifact. So they knew it was there. Darth Vader knew it was there. I mean, I doubt that Emperor Palpatine doesn't know what that was for. I mean, he's pretty well versed in Sith history.
I mean, that's true, but I mean, this was something that was thousands of years ago. I think you're right. They must have known that there was something there, but some of it must have been lost in translation. And then the other thing is, I don't know if killing everyone, really has a huge, net benefit for Palpatine. So long as the weapon is in his hands and can't be used by his enemies, I think, maybe that's all. Maybe that's enough.
Well,
I see where you're coming from. I think it's a valid criticism, but I'm not too worked up about it.
yeah. And I mean, the point to what did the weapon actually even do? I mean, if it just...
I think the implication was that it turned those people to stone. Again, going back to one of those Filoni interviews, apparently one of the ideas they had was to show the eighth brother, that new Inquisitor, surviving his fall, but then not being able to escape the blast of that weapon in time, and then like turning to stone. So that was the implication. Kind of reminded me of the thought bomb from the old Jedi vs. Sith comics.
Yeah.
Again, another ancient weapon that kind of dealt with people turning to stone or dust. And that specifically targeted Force users, so maybe that's what this did too. Who knows?
Yeah, but I mean, if that was so, how did Maul exactly think he was going to kill everyone with it, if it's just turning people around it to stone?
Well, who knows? Maybe it could have been targeted towards Palpatine. I mean, maybe Maul wasn't exactly in the right mindset, and maybe something was lost. I mean, who knows? Honestly, it's left ambiguous to us, and I think this is the sort of thing that could be just as ambiguous to the characters dealing with it.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Paul?
Well, I thought it was, interesting. Maul saw an opportunity to have an apprentice. He's obviously trained in the Sith ways. He's stuck on and the temple had to be operated by the rule of two. I think his plan probably was accelerated when Ezra showed up on the scene. Whether he's had foresight that was going to be the case, but he saw an opportunity to try and seduce an apprentice, helped him get into the temple finally. Maybe he was waiting for somebody to come along that was a Force wielder, whether they were dark side or light side, whatever. He needed to get access to it to be able to get into the temple, apparently, to get the artifact. And he saw an opportunity, I think, to maybe create, that opportunity for himself. And who knows? We could speculate all day long, I think, on what the weapon could have done for him had it been in his hands and Ezra becoming his apprentice. That's obviously where it was. But once he knew that Vader was on the way, is this a way? He's obviously got it in for Palpatine. That's his mortal enemy because of the way he was treated. Did he see this as an opportunity to kill Vader? Maybe that's where I would probably speculate that that's what he was hoping to be able to do. He saw an opportunity to kill Vader, which is Palpatine's, enforcer. That's probably the way I would leave it. That this is what his grand plan. At least it developed quickly, and he saw an opportunity to take advantage of that, and eventually get back to Palpatine. But beyond that, the crossguard saber, yeah, a lot of build up for that. Hey, great tie to the Force Awakens, but it lasted about 3 seconds. The temple was much more interesting. I don't know if we'll see it again, but that was a good part of the story.
Yep. All right. Well, anything else or?
Maybe we should all make our big bold prediction for something in season 3 from here.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah. How about real quick here, because we're kind of running a little long
but real
here,
quick,
but
real quick, I got to toot my own horn. Who called that Maul was going to come back in season 2?
Mm-hmm.
Who speculated last year at this time after season 1?
I didn't.
Yeah, that was me. That's why I brought it up.
All right. Well, what's your big bold bad prediction for season 3?
Oh, I haven't had time to think about it. I'll probably have to carry over one. It's probably not as bold now that we're this much further down the timeline, but I think the only one that I didn't get right in my bold predictions, I had 5, was that we were going to see the Death Star. So that's my bold prediction for season 3. We're going to see some construction of, and I think we kind of got there close with maybe one of the other episodes. There was a amassing of the Empire's resources in one area, but I'd like to see the Death Star being built in season 3.
George?
My prediction, we will see Wedge Antilles in season 3.
Good call.
That's I'm calling it now.
All right.
Good call.
My prediction, Ezra comes really close to killing Kanan. Really close.
I like that. Nice and specific.
Yeah.
Ooh, fun.
And I'd be okay with him killing him. But again,
I would too. I don't think they're going to do that,
all this
though.
stuff, right? I don't think they will, but that would be okay. That would be a great way for him to fall to the dark side. So that's a whole other episode.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Paul.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me. It was fun.
Star Wars is the exclusive trademark of Lucasfilm Limited. All Star Wars names and sounds are the exclusive copyright of Lucasfilm or parent company. All content generated on this site is the exclusive intellectual property of Faster and More Intense.